Hi, friends, and thank you for tuning in to the Still Podcast Author Series. My name is Heather Still, and this podcast is to get to know successful indie writers, their books, and their writing process. Thank you for joining us. If you like what you hear and what you see, please follow us, subscribe, follow the links, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And tune in next time. Hello, and thank you for listening and watching the Still Podcast Author Series. To end Season 1 of the Author Series, I have compiled 2 final episodes. One episode is a compilation of all 6 featured authors' takeaways from the 20 Books Vegas 2023 conference we all attended. Since I met each of the writers there, I felt it was important to learn about their takeaways and share them with you. The other bonus episode is a compilation of all 6 authors' advice to new indie authors, plus some bonus tidbits. If you are starting with one of these last episodes and learn something new, or want to learn more about an author, you should definitely watch or listen to their full podcast. It's been fun producing this first season, and there are plans for a second season in the spring. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you soon. For this episode, my question to each author is, what kind of advice would you like to give new indie authors?
I would say don't try to do everything all at once, because you don't have to. Finish the book. That's the first thing. Finish the book. Finish the first thing that you're going to publish. And then pick like one thing to focus on. And I would say probably like mailing list would be a really good idea. Like I wish I would have started my mailing list way earlier than I did. And I think you hear a lot of authors lament that, because it is, you own that relationship then, as opposed to Amazon or, anyone else. You own those readers. So finish the book first and then just focus on one thing at a time, because with as many books as I've written, I know this sounds really crazy, but writing the book is easy. It's the easier part. Switching then to the business aspect of an author business can feel very complex and very unwieldy and overwhelming very quickly. So being able to have that space and that grace, because you've already finished the book and now you're ready to pivot and focus, and then you can pick your one thing that you want to get really good at and just keep going and building from there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it. That's one of the nice benefits of doing this author series is I'm learning a lot.
Oh, I'm sure. And everybody does things a little bit differently, and so you can get to pick up nuggets everywhere. Talking to other authors is really fun.
I would just say, don't worry about the first book. I think that's the big thing. I see so many people, tying themselves in knots about the first book and, trying to get this huge social media presence before they get the first book out, hoping that that's going to just take off. You could be, the one in a million, but it's like winning the lottery for most people. It is slow. It is. I think on my first book, I had 44 pre-orders. I think that was even pretty decent, because I was coming across from Radish, so I had some following. But it is slow, and I don't think my sales really kicked off until after the third book. So I think you just have to put your head down, get a few books out, then reevaluate, ask somebody to look at your cover, look at your blurb, whatever, if you really feel like you're struggling. But I think for most people, it is just about getting a little bit of backlist behind you. And then I would say link the books, use your back matter properly. Make sure you've got a newsletter going so that you're capturing those reader emails, all those kind of foundational things that maybe you don't really want to spend the money on setting up right now, but it's definitely worth it. Definitely worth just doing. Get the newsletter going, get onto BookFunnel, join those promos, do those basics. But if nothing really happens, don't beat yourself up over it. It doesn't mean that it's not a good book or that it's not going to happen. Just keep going. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That's
Probably a bit bleak. It's like, yeah, you're not going to do well in your first book and just, accept it. But I think it's, people's, it can just be really hard when you think, okay, you're so excited about it. But the reality is that, there's so many books and there's so many writers, and however the algorithms work, Amazon kind of wants to see a track history of sales before they'll push you to the top of the list. And so it's slow going. Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you. I know that's certainly advice I need to hear. I have about 6 or 7 manuscripts that I just haven't finished. I get into the revision cycle.
Yeah.
And I never finish because I want to make it perfect.
Yeah. I think I'm a bit more done is better than perfect. You want it done really well, but there comes a point where, you're just moving commas around, or you're, changing how you phrase something, and, spending another month on it maybe improves it by like 0.2%. Is it going to move the dial? You're better off just getting it out there. But I would also procrastinate, and the longer I have on something, the more time I'll spend on it. So the pre-orders work for me in that I have a deadline. I have a deadline with my editor. I have to meet that. So it kind of stops you fiddling with it and doubting yourself and going back and changing things. And yeah, so that works for me. Other people, hate the idea of the pre-orders, but it works really well for me because it forces me to finish it. Where otherwise I probably would just keep going back and moving bits from here and there and changing dialogue, and just kind of fiddling around with it when you're not
Awesome.
really adding any value. I
Right.
don't know.
No, I love the way you look at it. That's great. Because when you look at it, that 13th revision, are you really changing all that much?
And sometimes you're actually taking out your style, if that makes sense. I don't know who, somebody was saying, I don't know whether it was Mark Dawson. I listened to a lot of their podcasts. He was saying that at that point you're making it so perfect and so polished that there's no character in it, or your voice is kind of gone. Where sometimes, the funny way that you might say things, like that's what your readers love, or if you've gone over it like 100 times and put it through 10 beta readers and all these ARC teams, and you accept all of their suggestions, it's not even, there's not that there's no soul to it. That sounds a bit much, but you know what I mean, that you've made it so perfect that it's kind of soulless or something. I don't know.
Right. Or at least less your story when you're
That's your
right?
story. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Too many chefs and all that. Yeah.
Any advice?
Here's what I've seen a lot of people do, and here's what I did for a long time, is you sit on things because you think it's not perfect enough, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to get out there, right? Like everyone just needs to put their stuff out there, and that's okay. And yes, you should get it edited. And yes, there should be some sort of polishing, right? But nothing's ever perfect. I mean, you can read through so many books and there's still like mistakes, right? There's still grammar mistakes, there's still spelling mistakes, but there's also still, I read books that are really great and they've messed up the names. Like they put somebody's name in and it was supposed to be a different character. Like things get messed up, and that's okay. Just putting your stuff out there. Don't sit on it. Don't sit on it and wait, because what are you waiting for?
Right. Awesome. And that's exactly what I needed to hear. So thank you.
Yeah, I think the answer is publish. That's basically what I took away from 20 Books Vegas too, wasn't it? Sasha Black, somebody that was really big up there was like, her mom kept saying, well, what are you going to do with this? Just hit the button, like put it out there for the world, see what happens. And I remember hitting the button and like, okay, so now it's out there in the world. Is anyone going to care? Will it be an overnight sensation? All the different extremes that might happen. And of course, nothing that dramatic probably happens to almost everybody. It didn't happen to me. But anyway, publish, put it out there, Heather, go forward, see what happens. Because the next work of it, I mean, that was really the celebratory thing to me, was like, okay, I did the full year. Yay, I've done it. And then I realized, oh no, now I have to learn all these other skills to format, and fighting through the formatting was a pain. And then once I finally hit the button, I'm like, okay, but in the formatting process, I'd read enough stuff and learned enough from blogs and podcasts that this wasn't going to be an overnight thing, and I should just look at it. But anyway.
Well, I'm pretty new myself. So
Okay, fair
I
enough.
mean, I have published a few books, but fiction is brand new for me. So
Mhm.
I think they talk about writing to market, and I think that's really important if you want to make a living at this. But at the same time, I really think that you can't sacrifice what when something really is important to you, what propels you to write. So I think there are ways to write to market and hit the points that might be popular while still being true to your own drive, your own desire. Because if you write to market too much, then you might find yourself writing either in a genre that you hate, or writing the kind of material that other people love but you find tedious. So you have to find that happy balance between marketing and giving people what they want to read, and writing what you're really driven to write. That would be my advice.
Excellent, thank you. And I really like how you stress, yes, writing to market's important, but at the same time, you have to tell your story.
Mhm.
And I think another writer was on here about the whole editing process and getting feedback and being careful not to respond so much to the feedback of and changing your story so that it's no longer your story.
Exactly. Yes, you can go back and you can change a lot and lose the essence of what you had. Yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned AI too, and I've since the conference downloaded Pro Writing Aid, I think it's called.
Right.
And I feel like that's AI because it gives me all these suggestions. All I do is highlight a word and it's like, would you like sensory? Would you like this? Would you like that? And then it gives me all these
Right.
crazy suggestions. But I'm noticing that I have to be careful because if I take too many of those suggestions, it's like I
Yeah.
lose my voice, my author voice. And I'm like, so.
Exactly. I guess it's like anything in life. We have so many options, and too many options aren't necessarily good. So you do need to maintain that focus of what your goal is and how you want to express yourself. But AI it's here to stay. It's the way of now. It's the way of the future, and it's the way of now. So I don't think I would use it for writing story, but
Mhm.
it certainly has lots of value in terms of how you might describe your story, or your book description, let's say, or your character ideas. You might want some prompting for that, but you can still do it organically and write your own story.
Absolutely. Set aside time every day to write.
Oh,
If you can't edit a blank page, and writing is why we're doing this, so have that time, guard it, because what I have learned is if I don't put boundaries up during the time I'm supposed to be writing, things will quickly come in and fill it.
okay.
And if you have a day where things just go crazy, and like I had a kiddo with a flat tire, we rode to their rescue, and
Mm.
didn't get to write that day. And I was like, you know what? During NaNoWriMo, I had the flu. I couldn't write for 2 days. I just dust myself back up, and I'm like, okay, well, those 2 days didn't happen, but I'm going to go right back to it and just keep having that time that I guard. So that's my best advice. So many people are like, oh, I want to write. And I'm like, well, why haven't you? I can't find the time. I'm like, you will not find it. You have to make it.
And that is great advice. Thank you.
Jessica the writer, I think that is a journey for every writer. Like, it starts when we're young and we create stories, and and life kind of gets in the way along some point, and then hopefully we come back to it if it's meant to be. And that's how I feel about my writing journey.
I love how you say that writing is this journey that we come back to, right? I was a big writer in high school, and then when I went to college, I wasn't brave enough to pursue that as my major. I got my degree in resort and lodging management instead. And here I am now teaching English and becoming a writer. So I love that part of the journey.
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially college, kind of takes away that love of writing because you have to do so many essays, right? You have to do like kind of serious things, and you're not able to delve into creativity all the time. That being said, I did take some really great lit classes in college, and I was able to do some of my creative writing. It was really fantastic. So sometimes life just gets in the way, right? And I don't know how you were, but when I was growing up, writing wasn't an option. I mean, it wasn't an option until I stumbled upon 20 books to 50K, right? Like when I stumbled into that group, I finally saw that writing could be like a viable career choice.
My goal is to not overwhelm my 14 subscribers with a bunch of newsletters.
Oh, then I have a question for you. Where do you get subscribers? Because that part is proving tricky.
So I did Jane Friedman's workshop. So Jane Friedman, just big, if you haven't heard of her, just she does a lot of workshops, webinars. I have her book about the business of being a writer, just a fabulous resource. And I attended hers on marketing specifically for the email newsletter. And she recommended 3. There's MailChimp, MailerLite, and Substack were the 3 she recommended. Now, I know there's some others out there, but she gave her reasons. And the reason she was suggesting Substack for the newbies was because on Substack, I thought it was just for writers, but there's a whole bunch of other people on there too. But you can recommend each other.
Ah, okay.
So like I've got 3 Substacks I recommend. Only one person's recommending my Substack right now.
Hey.
But I mean, we could all get on Substack and recommend each other.
True.
So I've started there. And I will probably set up a MailerLite one at some point because that seems to be the preferred one. I'm trying to remember what else. There was a couple others thrown out there. I can't remember the others. I know Wix is one, but I'm not familiar with it.
Here we are 18 months later, and I love it. Yeah, it's great. So it's as much of a surprise to me that I'm here, 2 years later, but it's great fun and I love doing it, and I love interacting with the readers, especially. I love that side of it. So we'll keep going. Yeah.
Another thing that I really like that you do is you start your stories in media res, like right in the middle of the action. Like
Yeah.
too often authors like give us too much detail and too much of the info dump. And so I really like how you start your books right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't make a good, fantasy writer with all the, epic world building and everything that goes on. I'm kind of, really cut to the chase. I think that comes from starting out writing on the apps. So originally the Alpha Savior, because I had no clue about self-publishing, no clue about any kind of publishing. So I put that up on Wattpad and released the chapters to get some like beta feedback. And it really took off there. So I started writing the rest of the books then on Radish. And as you post the chapters, you get instant feedback.
Okay.
But you also will go nowhere if you're putting up chapters that are fillers or where there's no hook to go on to the next chapter. So like if you put up a really boring chapter that's obviously just there, to get another chapter read or whatever, it's just filler. You're just going to lose followers. They're not going to wait around for another few days for the next chapter. So it has to be interesting and it has to capture people's attention from the beginning.
I listen to podcasts. I listen to a lot of different podcasts on writing, on the author business, and listening to Becca Syme, she has the Quick Cast, and talking about writer's block and how, depending on what strengths you have. Sometimes Relator is my number one. When you have external relationships that are really kind of messy and not great, which was my life for a while, that can really impact your ability to do this and be creative and all of those things. So that was spot on for me. Just really appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with you, Heather, like to be here. And I share what I can. The indie community is so generous with information and lifting everyone up around them. And so anything that I can do to help anyone else, I'm always glad to do that, because, you know, that's what we do. That's our community, and it's a really great place to be.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all that you do and all your help. And thank you for joining me here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you for joining us. Feel free to subscribe, like us, rate us. Look forward to seeing you next time.